All right, guys. Hello. All right, so today we are going to cover the events portion, and I'm going to describe more just the how do I put this? Um, Events that are just, I guess, kind of common, like on any HTML object, we can add an event, and it is JavaScript, so let's see. I prepared a little something just to give you a preview. We'll go ahead and create a new version of this. Um, so we're going to create this SVG rectangle or something SVG maybe. It could be a div. It could be this dude. I mean, we created that yesterday. Um, but I want to describe the events so you understand what they are, uh, kind of by themselves in a sense, and then show how to hook up what we did yesterday on the OOP side, just like how to actually build an object, and then hook up the events to that object and make the OOP object respond in accordance to those events in a powerful way. This is responding in a powerful way, but it's not really integrated with our own classes. It's just using the default HTML tags or built-in stuff that's available to you, and even that's powerful, like being able to build a page or build UI elements on a page. So let's go ahead and look at that and just see what that looks like. So I created this little example here. I created kind of this is like where I started to fail, and I just had to step back and think, and I implemented a different event on the actual browser or the document body of our page instead of on our element. And I also wanted to show you some other, I shouldn't say some other, but a other way of creating an object. So this is really, this should look familiar. Um, in the sense that so this is an object, this is a JavaScript object, and we can kind of see that same format happening here. So when we created our dialog box class and we get off of the drill down, we see this object notation, and that's really what it is. It's a JSON notation. So JSON object notate, or sorry, JSON stands for, let me just put it here. If you don't know, it stands for JavaScript Object Notation. JSON, sorry. So JavaScript, capitalize that, notation. Okay, so JSON. That's what that is. Okay, so this is really it's just an object with properties. That's all this does, at least for how I've created it. It's just limited down to properties. And let's go ahead and break this whole kind of document down. We'll go ahead and switch back over to that, and we'll refresh that. So alls I have in my body as far as HTML goes is I've used an SVG element, and I put a rectangle inside, and it's got a border, but the border's kind of defined. I want to. Can I get rid of that? Hey, I can get rid of that. Cool. All right. So it's got this border defined, and that border is defined by a stroke width of 5. So this is kind of a CSS thing for SVG. I shouldn't say kind of. It is, and we're actually using that because we're using the dot style property for for these. So here's my on mouse down. So when my mouse goes down on that, right? The style dot stroke goes to red, but the stroke width is 5 still. So that 5 pixel wide border is that stroke width property. And then the style dot fill turns pink. And then when I let go or on my mouse up, it the stroke the stroke width, that's, that border is blue, and then the fill is a cyan color. So there we go. We're changing things still in our JavaScript CSS kind of way, and we're now using these events. So these are built in to the HTML elements, right? The different things we can do, and there's a bunch of these. Let's see. I'm gonna see if I can look some up. Let's go to W3 Schools. Uh, Shoot, I don't even know how to ask for them appropriately. Oh, by the way, there's a JSON. There's a Over here on W3 Schools. There's a JSON section, and you can read up on JSON, and it kind of shows you like how the format works. And I would recommend at some point going over there and just maybe just learning up on what it means to work in JSON. Um, and then let's see. Do, 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 do. There's one more I wanted to. I'm not seeing it up here. More. So go to Learn Graphics, and then there's a whole SVG like tutorial section here, um, which is really cool because now you can hop in and understand what it means to create HTML type formatted elements for graphics. So you can create your own vector graphics like we did. In our sense, it was just a rectangle with a border on it. But we could have created a whole lot more. And uh, I'm, I'm positive we're going to hop into more of the graphical way of doing things. We're going to touch a little bit on SVG, and then the other thing that we're probably going to use some of, maybe not in this series, not in this OOP series, but when we start hopping into other projects, we're going to take advantage of SVG. We're also probably going to touch on Canvas, which, yeah, there we go. They got another Canvas tutorial, and there's other things that use Canvas. I'm thinking primarily something like uh, drawing a blank here. One of the 3D libraries. They use the 3D context of the Canvas. 3JS, I think, is what I'm thinking of. Um, and there's another. There's a. It's a. What do they call that now? There. It used to be the VRML version of web tech, and it's what that's turned into. So we might touch on some of that in some future videos as well. But again, not in this series. So I do recommend just going and getting a sense at some point of how SVG works. Again, these guys they have so much content in terms of just like how to do something, and not just how to do something, but you hop in here and they give a try it yourself, and you can start to draw these things or change properties. I want to change that to 70 maybe, and then run that, and boom, that got super big, and it was way bigger than the you know because it's a radius property. So 70 times 2 would be 140. So let's just put this at 200, and let's see here. 200, run that, and things then begin to change. So um, let's see. Yeah. So anyway, you can get in there and you can play with the values and play with the colors, or do whatever you want to. You don't and you don't have to even open up a text editor. They kind of have it here for you, which is pretty cool. Anyway, I'm not I'm you know I'm not even I'm not getting paid to advertise for them. So I just appreciate what they've done. They've really pulled a lot of information together, and it's just a great resource. So uh, just more for you if you want to go learn. I'm more interested in your learning than their marketing, but they've done a good enough job where I have no problem telling you, hey, it's a good tool. So end on that one. So let's start dissecting some more. What's happening over here? Oh, the whole reason for going over there, I missed it. Um, let's see. I guess it's not. I still got to go back to them over there. So W3 schools. And what I'm looking for is the HTML. Is it HTML or JavaScript? This gets kind of weird. So I think it's HTML events. Am I just missing it? Events. So on the HTML references, there's HTML events, and then there's all these HTML5 events, and that's okay. They're really just adding more events. And then there's just different things like form events and what happens at the window level. The window meaning just not even the document, but what's happening like if I resize this window, right? There's some so there's like what is it on resize? There you go. There's a browser event that happens. If I click on a form or anything like that, there's form specific events, keyboard events, on key up, on key press, on key down. That starts to kind of hit some, you know, things a little globally, like on mouse down, right? So there's a mouse event for that. On mouse move, on mouse over, on mouse up. I'm using these three. So I'm using on mouse down, on mouse up, and then on the document itself, I'm using on mouse move. So those three gave us this functionality here. And let's see. So let's say on mouse down, that's what I captured on my first event. And you see how they're kind of put in line with like a paragraph element, so a P element in HTML. So they have this attribute similar to like CSS, right, where we have like a style attribute could be in line with our tag. JavaScript can also be in line with our tag, but it only really happens on these events. So these events can get plugged in here. So I can say like on mouse down, right? I could type that there equals and then put it in quotes and then start typing out some JavaScript and whatnot. I chose not to do that because these things start to get unwieldy if you put too much in there. They become almost unreadable because they just span the page and you got to keep scrolling over to the right just to see what its content is. Um, so I tend to just pull this down into a script tag, very similar to how we were dealing with CSS back over here. We started, we could have put our CSS again in this kind of format, but instead of doing that, we opted to set that attribute so that we would get the equivalent of this, but then we can go and manipulate it on the JavaScript side. So that's all I did. Um, I just made sure I went and got that element, and then I tapped that event because those events are available for these elements. So, all right, got this parent element is what I called it, which is the SVG container, and then anything inside of that container would be considered the parent or part of the parent. So if I click on the text or I click on the rectangle or any part of it, it's it all falls in the scope of SVG. So, all right, let's break this down now. So this is my only HTML element on the screen, and then within that element is obviously got two descriptions for two more graphical elements, and they act like HTML. And they did something a little, or I did something a little different today. So there's a children property, and before we were doing everything by ID, and we still do that. We still grab that main component by its ID. Um, but I had a certain structure I used. So the first element I placed in there was a rectangle, and the second one was this text element. And so I have these two children, and it's like an array. So let's go ahead and picture this. So I'm just going to make a array, and let's just make it a variable uh, for demo, right? Equals an array. It's not going to do anything because we're not doing anything with it, but we are creating this variable. Um, and it's just for your understanding sake of what's happening. So there's a collection somewhere in here that says, okay, so for our, here, let's do it this way. Um, let's put it after our R1 declaration. So for demo, inside of that demo element, like, so and I'll show you the structure, I guess, of that. Um, let's just, let's pretend we were creating the R1, or we created the R1 element. It was one of our class objects, right? Something like that. And we would have like an R1 dot children equals, and then we can put in our different children. So we could put in like rect1 or comma text1, something like that. So inside of this SVG element, there are two children, and it just it's a method it's a built-in method of how to get at this. Shouldn't even say method. It's a property. Uh, so that property is an array. Um, don't let this confuse you. That was real confusing. Sorry. Um, we didn't do anything with that. That was just for demo's sake. So, but there is this built-in children. It's not a method. There's no parentheses, but it is an array object. And I didn't really explain arrays either. So let's go ahead and just pop in array, just so you get an understanding of how those work. So let's see, var ABC, and we're just going to make a goofy array here. And an array can contain any, uh, at least in JavaScript, it can contain any other JavaScript type. So this can contain a string, this can contain a number, this can contain another array, which is kind of weird, but it can do this. So text2, and then we'll just say like 456. This can contain a JSON object or something like that, so a JavaScript object. And so I'm just going to say label 1, and then what does label 1 say? Label 1 says I'm a label, something like that, right? So let's let's close off this array, and let's type in ABC, and there we go. I have an array of these things. So I have a text item, I have a number item, I have a nested array in here, and then I have an object here. And to access those, so I would say ABC, I can open a bracket, put the index number. So index values start at 0, 1, 2, 3, right? And then I can hit enter, and it's going to give me the value of whatever's in that spot. So I can say ABC1, and I will get 1, 2, 3 back, and I can say ABC2, and I'll get another array. So now I can say ABC2, 0, and I'll get text2, and ABC2 and 1, and I'll get the 4, 5, 6, and so on. Now, JSON works, and I just wanted to explain this while we're breaking this down so you see what's happening. So let's say ABC3, and we'll get this object. So now ABC of 3, and now I can use the dot syntax because it's an object, right? It returned an object. and we know what that looks like because we used objects yesterday. We created our own. So now we can say, okay, what is our properties of our object? Well, the property is label 1. That's our only property in this one. So label 1, enter, and it returns the actual value of the property. Okay, that probably deserved almost a video all its own, but it was kind of short. That's okay. We'll keep moving, but that I just you had to kind of see all those things in play to understand what's happening here, what's happening here, and how to use them. So this is the basics of how to use those. All right, clear the console. Done fooling around with all that. All right, so now just getting back onto the event side of all this now. So I have my HTML element. We know that there's all sorts of events that we can use. So on mouse down, on mouse up, and then I have another one that is not on this page, on mouse move, and I've used all of those. So on R1, I've only opted to use these two, and what happens is when this happens, the browser says, "Hey, I detected this event on this element, so you can use that now." So I said, "Okay, well, let's turn that into a function because we want to trigger something to happen when the browser says this has happened. When mouse down happens on that R1 element, which I just happen to call R1 for like rectangle 1. That's what I'm equating this parent SVG to is rectangle 1 because that's what it looks like, a rectangle. Okay. So, and then R1 underscore 1 is the 0 element. It's the rectangle. R1 underscore 2 is the second element, and that's the text element. So on mouse down, I'm I'm trapping that event and I'm taking whatever the event gives us. So on a mouse event, there's these certain things that happen. Um, does it really? It doesn't really tell us in this one. So let's go back. Mouse events. Hmm. See, I'm working off of experience, and I haven't really gone and looked at the like where to find all this stuff. So maybe it's in the first one. Maybe it's in the first one. Hmm. HTML DOM reference. Let's look at the DOM reference version of this. And DOM elements, DOM events. So let's go to DOM events because this is really what they are. It's the domain, or sorry, not domain, document object model is what that stands for. So for this model to be used in or the HTML DOM model is what JavaScript uses, right? So there's everything's modeled. So meaning there's a whole paradigm to follow for us to use or reference HTML, right? Like we did here, we referenced an HTML element. So that's what the DOM describes. It describes the HTML structure over to JavaScript. So JavaScript obviously makes use of all this. So let's say mouse events, and let's let's pick one. It looks like it brings us kind of back to the same section. Um, it's not really showing us. I wanted to see what the event object looks like itself. It, I mean, they show you how to use it, but I'm not seeing a huge reference here. tell you what, we're not gonna waste a bunch of time on that. But um, let me take a quick peek. I would sure hate to miss it when I feel like I'm so close here. Nope, that's not it. Backup one, HTML events, JavaScript tutorial. Maybe they have something about it in there. Media events, miscellaneous events. Okay, I'm sure they have it. There's even some search capability in here. We could probably find it. Again, I'm not gonna spend too much time. That could hijack this whole video. So anyway, we're already got some minutes into this one. So let me briefly explain it. So any mouse event is going to have some information about the mouse, right? The cursor location, uh, the buttons that are clicked, like the states of the buttons, things like that. So there's this event object that gets passed in, and it's context sensitive to the fact that it was a mouse that caused that event to happen. So there's this client X and client Y property, and what that's the X and Y location of my mouse in the browser. So if I'm right at the top left corner, my mouse is 39, 46 if I'm right there. Okay. And that's but if I'm over here, I'm no doubt, you know, like add 50 pixels to roughly, right, to the X value of that and add, I don't know, a good, how tall is that thing? That thing's 20, so add another 10 pixels. So, you know, my mouse is from take this value, which is being displayed from the top left here, and add that X distance and this Y distance down, and that's where my mouse event, client X and client Y, are being calculated to. So all I'm doing is replacing, or I'm subtracting out, like, because this is more positive. So let me explain positive and negative again, or not again, for the first time, I think. X moves positive this way in HTML, and Y moves positive this way. It's probably backwards from the way you learned it in school, um, but that's the way, unfortunately, a lot of graphics works. 0, 0 is here, positive Y is down instead of up, and positive X is to the right. So that's why that Y value is increasing over here on the right hand side, is because we're going down. And so anytime my cursor is actually in the element, so it's not in the element, nothing happens here, right? So if I'm in the element, I'm always positive, positive. So I know I need to subtract from the bigger amount from the smaller amount. So I'm getting the left-hand side of that. I'm using a trick of a string. It's a method of a string object that says split. And let's briefly explain what split does. So if I have a string and it says, let's make it a variable, my str equals val1 comma val2 comma val3 comma val4, and that's a string. And let's just call it so we see, yep, it's a string. Okay, so we can do this my string dot split, and I can split by a comma, let's say. And let's go ahead and put this, we'll just call this my str arr for array. And what this does is it turns the string into an array. And what it does is it removes the comma out of the string, and it isolates these parts. So it says, okay, go find this one and split the string there. So, and then it took whatever was there and it put it there. And then it says, go find the next one and take that next split and put that value there, and find the next one, put that there, and then whatever's left over, put it there. And it just keeps happening until it doesn't find any more commas. So we could have done the same thing. Let's just change that string. I'm going to put in this PX, 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 and I don't have to put it there, but we can. It doesn't really matter. Um, and now, whoops, we're not separating it by comma. We're separating it by PX now. So it does the same thing. It found PX and it split everything by that. It got rid of it, and then it just took whatever it was able to slice off the front end here and put it in the first spot. It removed the split, uh, what it's splitting by, then went to the next one and sliced again, took whatever was here, put it there, and so on. And that's the way that works. So what happens when we look at a string that's like this, right? Well, or like this, technically. So that's a string value because it's a number mixed with a string, right? A P and an X is a string or a string of characters. So we have to, if we split by that, it removes that, and we get the first object of that, which is the 0 index. I'm left with only the number. So when two numbers are being operated on, it knows, hey, okay, I can do the math. Um, that's all that's happening here. So it says the mouse, wherever the mouse is on X, okay, subtract this higher value from the smaller value, and wherever this goes, it's basically trapping the delta between here and there. So I'm storing a delta, and you'll see that delta kind of being used here in this event. Um, we're resetting all of that on mouse up. We're just stopping everything and just kind of coming back to a default set of things. So let's go and look what I did here. So I registered this window. So we got to look at this thing too. So window, when we created a script tag here and we created this variable m, what happened is this is now a variable or a parameter, if you want to call it that, or a property of the window. This variable is a property of the window, and so we just reference it that way, window.m. So that's now that we have access to that. And then we're getting into the object and we say .md. So I'm just saying, okay, 1 is true, 0 is false. That's just the way I'm dealing with it. It's simple. It's just a 0, 1 factor. And so I'm just saying, okay, the mouse is down. And that's what I'm saying. And I'm recognizing that on this mouse move. Like if the mouse is down, okay, then what? Uh, well, I'm also setting this what I'm calling MO for mouse over. So mouse is over this element, and it's going to register the ID, which is the parent, and it's going to put it there. Okay, and then it's going to say window.m.mx, which is the mouse x uh, delta. So it's saying go subtract the two and trap the delta, meaning go find whatever this is and add wherever the mouse X and Y location is and trap that. So as soon as I trap that, these two get set on these two lines. And then obviously the colors change for the stroke and the fill. Okay, so next part. On mouse up, we're just clearing all that back. We're setting mouse down to be off now because the mouse button came up. Uh, we're clearing out the deltas again because we're not trying to move it because our mouse button came up. So now we can move our mouse normally. Okay. And we're clearing out the mouse over, right? It's not, if it's up, we don't care. We're not trying to trap this. We're trying to clear it to say, don't try to move our element anymore. And it's kind of it works as a double check. Is the mouse down? And is that something other than, right? Other than being blank? Because on any mouse up event, when I'm done like moving this thing and I mouse up, I don't want to move that. I want to make sure that my mouse is registering as up or false, right? And that there's nothing there to detect that, hey, you're trying to move this anymore. So that's all that's really happening in these two functions. Now the magic happens, and let me show you my mistake first. Um, so I was trying to say, okay, and this kind of actually here, let's comment this one out, and you'll kind of see it works, but it doesn't work as cleanly. And the reason why is there is a, let's go ahead and refresh that. There is a lag. So like, was that a full refresh? So sometimes, huh, it's actually working pretty good. Um, Sometimes you can get this thing to fail and like your mouse is still down. So like if I shake it really fast, maybe, I don't know. Um, no, this thing's still working. Uh, did that give me a full refresh? Oh, it didn't because I'm still on this. Oh, I didn't save this. That's why. Okay. Now I won't look like a liar. So my mouse is still down and I'm still moving and I move right because I move on and it's there. So I'm getting this weird behavior like, hey, I'm just trying to move you. My mouse is down. Come on. But there's a lag. Like it's got to keep up like on frame refreshes. So it didn't make much sense for me to do this on mouse move while I'm over the, and now my events are just all messed up. Sorry, pardon that. Anyway, be, because the mouse is able to move so much quicker than the browser is able to refresh, and it's happening in milliseconds. Sorry, I need a quick drink here. Pardon me. Okay, just trying to get rid of the scratch in my throat. So, uh, because the mouse is being calculated on the operating system level, it's given super high priority, which means it refreshes a lot faster than anything else on that's open as an application, which is kind of running as a secondary, right? Like inputs king on an operating system because it's got to recognize keyboard events for all sorts of things. It's got to recognize mouse events for doing anything on an OS, like switching applications or launching a new one or clicking over here or you name that. And the OS is giving priority to inputs. So what happened? And my mouse button's not even clicked anymore, but because it didn't give me my mouse up event while I was over top of this, now it just doesn't know, and it's just like, oh, okay, well, la-di-da, movie, right? Just move, because what happened is I couldn't execute on mouse up here when I wasn't on top of that, because it's like, well, what do you mean? If the mouse is up, it's up. It's gotta happen while it's over top of this thing. So the workaround for that was to just, and it was a good workaround. It's a really good workaround because the body is a much larger area, right? So the document covers every place you would ever want to trap your mouse, with the exception of maybe off screen. So if I do this and I let go and I come back in, I've also messed up the event. Um, so let's there we go. But I have a lot more flexibility now. I bet you I didn't save that. There we go. Let's save that and refresh that. I have a lot more flexibility now to, so I still messed the event up. I'm going to let go of my mouse, come back in here, and I still didn't do my on mouse up event properly. Well, again, when you're outside of the object, it's like, hey, I can't trap you properly. So most people will be okay with that because while they're in here, it's a better of two evils. Let's put it that way. While while we're in here, things work great, right? And there's a bigger area, and you can even see it's trying to play catch up with my mouse. Sorry, it's hard to look at because I'm just bouncing, but I'm trying to show you that no matter how fast I shake this thing, I I can't, even though I can see a separation between my mouse and the element, it's still going to catch back up because I'm still over top of, no matter where I'm at in here, I'm still over top of the document. And the document says, well, the mouse is still down and this hasn't been cleared out yet. So go ahead and do the calculations anyway and catch back up when you can. And that's really, and let's ignore this. That was me attempting to do something that I shouldn't have been doing. Okay, so what did we do? Let's explain this mouse move event and then be done with this video. And then follow-up video, we're just going to take all of our stuff, all of the stuff we've been doing, and we're going to make a small functional, let's call it a utility. It's not really an application as far as I'm concerned quite yet, but we'll make a small utility uh, within the browser that actually does something more than just all of the cool parts and pieces we've been messing with, but we'll wrap that up and do something really kind of all inclusive of all the stuff we're learning to date. So we'll do this part and be done. So what we've done here is I did this event, right? Event prevent default. So the reason why, so and I just did it right here. So when I drag my mouse here with my mouse down, well, it's for the intention of selecting text because there's text here and I'm in the text editor. Well, on a web page, there's a lot of times you want to select text, like right click and copy or something, and then go and paste that into like a Word document or an email message or something, right? So there's text in here, and you can even see my cursor change, but the text isn't being selected. Well, without this, I'm going to comment that out, save it, refresh, and you'll see if I go, if I get my cursor over here, it's starting to select text now. And that looks real ugly and real funny. So I just did like, hey, prevent the default behavior by saying event.prevent default with capital D camel cased, and it's a method. So it's a method that just says, I don't know, something internal to the browser, stop the ability to select text in this way, because when we're doing that and my cursor changes because over top of text, I don't I didn't save it, so it's still kind of highlighting text. So now, even though my cursor is that way, if I go left, it's not trying to select, or go right here, no text is being selected. And that's what I want. I didn't want my text being selected. Um, but it still kind of looks funny, so we can polish that up. We won't do it this video. So let's just keep moving here. Um, so now we're getting at this window.m, right? This variable. And then we're getting at the object by calling the property of m, because m is this whole object. Okay, so md, if that's equal to 1, if the mouse is down and mouse over is not equal to an empty string, because we set it here to be this element, this parent element. So if those two things are true, then go ahead and do something. Otherwise, it'll never try to move anything, and it doesn't have information to move anything. So let's see. Actually, what I should have done is placed this inside of here. Okay, so if these two things are true, then prevent the ability to select text on the screen, because I can cover the whole document with this event. So if I wanted for some reason to select text on something else, I should be able to do that. I shouldn't, just because it didn't happen to meet this criteria, it shouldn't stop me from being able to use things normally. So this prevention should be inside of this criteria. Okay. And then I just made this mouse over element, right? So just generic, because I don't want it hard coded to R1, because I could reuse this to other things by setting the on mouse down uh, to 1 and setting a different ID altogether, and then maybe I wanted to move that. Well, this becomes generic. It says, okay, this is whatever, that this mo element is whatever is being trapped in this mouse over property of this object. So I'm starting to put a structure together that makes sense on a global way. So that's really what this is. This is a global variable, or M is a global object, I should say, for me to use anywhere in my script. Okay, so, and then as long as I also keep my same structure, right? What is my children? Well, as long as every is my second element in my whatever object I put in here is text, and, and I just assumed it for now because maybe I want a bunch of the same item, right? And let's just do this. Copy this, paste that, paste that. And I'm just going to call this parent 2, and I'm going to call that parent 3. Okay, and then let's see. I am. This could start to get a little ugly, but it's all right. Actually, let's copy that. We can get rid of this mistake now. But I wanted to show you, hey, I fail. I struggle with things too. I have to figure things out. I don't want to hide that from you. I want you. I think those are valuable learning things. So let's just change these all to 2, and let's say this is 2, and this is 2, and then all this is 2, and there's a few more. 2. You know what? I'm just going to do this. Control H, R1 needs to be R2. Replace, 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 replace. And then on mouse move. Ooh, I shouldn't have done that there. This should say mo elem. Glad I did this because it helped me correct this. Because we need it generic, because the document body on mouse move needs to be generic. Okay, so I'm going to move that out of the way, and we're going to copy this one more. How many? Yeah, we got 3 of them. So I'm going to copy this one more time, and paste, paste, and where are we at? So on mouse down, now we want to be here. Anything that's R2, Control H needs to be R3. And replace, 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 place, 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 replace, 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 replace. Okay, done. Save, refresh. What's happening? Why can't I move anything? Well, what's going on? What? Come on, that all should have worked. Parent 2. Ha ha ha. That should be parent 3. Save. Maybe that's the problem. No? Script. Okay, I'm gonna, again, oh, hey, we have an error. Uncut R3 is not defined. Well, what do you mean R3 is not defined? Oh, pff, I didn't replace it up here. Okay, cool. 3, no, what am I doing? R3 is too defined. It's right there. Refresh. 53. 53 R3 on mouse up. Oh, I changed. That's the problem. I changed it way back there. Refresh. There we go. So there's whatever this is. We can inspect that. So we can inspect, and that should be parent 3 because it was on top. This should be parent 2. It is, and this is 1. So all of that works, except for the mouse up is not working on this. R2 on mouse up. Oh, because I there we go. Refresh. That works. That works. It's changing its color back, and that works. Okay, so we have all three of these working, and obviously when I refresh, they all kind of go back to the same position because I didn't change that, but it all works. So I hope you followed this. I'm actually here. I'm just going to simplify it again. I'm going to remove that all the way back to there. Shouldn't say I'm going to remove it. I'll comment that whole section out back to there. And I'm just going to collapse it. So we're only dealing with this one element again. I'm going to comment this one out as well. And there we go. Save. So now we're only dealing with one element again, and we just commented out any of the HTML for the extras, but it's still present. So anything that's not commented, I'm going to try to make this available somewhere. When I do, I'll go ahead and place the link to this document. I'll probably just throw it up on like a JS Fiddle or something like that, so you can play with it. And I'm going to call that good for now. And I might come back around, and we do have, I think I'm going to come back around and just reinforce the ideas of events anyway, because we are going to mesh these things together. There's just so much kind of going on. I want to make sure that you get the sense of like, and I think I did, I explained it, how we're trapping information and setting a global so that when we come over here on the document side, we still understand the state of what's going on. Or when we lift our mouse button, though, we need to also set those states so that when we're moving our mouse around on the document, we understand what we should or shouldn't do. So while my mouse is down and over this, I should move that. While it's not and I'm moving my mouse, this shouldn't move. So that's the basics of it. Okay, let's cut it off there. I'll try to quit insulting your intelligence. That's not the intent. I just want to make sure that I'm going through enough exhaustion to where you understand it, because I will be moving forward, and moving forward is just going to complicate things. So go ahead, actually, in the comments, if you're struggling with these things, I want to hear about it, because I want to be able to address them in future videos, or maybe just supplemental videos on very specific things that I failed to relay to you, or just things you're struggling with. So in general, because I want to make sure that we're able to move forward, and all of this stuff is makes sense to you. I have other tools at my disposal to hopefully explain things. So again, I try to go exhaustive this way, but there's so much to cover in one video. I think I need to come back around and just summarize everything and make sure I just kind of bullet point like the important parts of everything. And if I failed to mention something, your input's going to be valuable. So leave a comment. Leave a comment down below this video here. So, all right, guys, take care.